This is Andrew Borland, Head of Commercial at the University of Liverpool's Virtual Engineering Centre.
And Dani Arribas-Bel, ESRC Fellow and Deputy Director in Urban Analytics at the Alan Turing Institute.
And I am Anthony Mtitimila, Senior Partnerships and Innovation Manager at University of Liverpool, and you're now listening to Making an Impact, special for the Academy Developing Practice podcast.
Andrew, Dani, and my guest co-host Anthony, I'm really pleased to be speaking to you today for this Making an Impact special. We're delighted to talk to you about how the university-led research and innovation is transforming cities. But before we get started, we really like to get to know our guests first. So it'd be great if you could just tell us a little bit about your background. So Dani, if we start with you.
Yeah, thank you. And hello, I'm Dani Arribas-Bel. I'm Professor in Geographic Data Science at the Department of Geography and Planning in Liverpool. And I'm also Deputy Program Director for Urban Analytics at the Alan Turing Institute in London, where I spend quite a bit of my time these days. A bit of my background, I was originally trained as an economist in Spain. I did my PhD on urban economics, which is the part of economics that focuses on cities, on understanding why they are the way they are and how they can be a little better. And then after that, I started drifting, as you could say, a little bit from economics and ended up in geography. Along the way, I got really interested in using computers and data. Back then it wasn't called data, it was more focused on computers, but the focus on data and data science came a bit later with data science. And really what I've been doing throughout my career is combining the three: cities, computers, or computational approaches and data, particularly new forms of data. And that's most of what I do today, both with my Liverpool hat and my Turing hat.
Wonderful, thank you. And Andrew, yourself?
My name's Andrew Borland. I'm Head of Commercial at the Virtual Engineering Centre, which is a knowledge exchange and industrial engagement and innovation centre of the University of Liverpool's Institute of Digital Engineering and Autonomous Systems. So we're a little bit different from most of the university. We do kind of translational research and regionally focused innovation, trying to help academics build bridges with industry and really sort of try and accelerate the journey from blue skies research to practical application within UK manufacturing and digital sectors.
Wonderful, thank you. And Anthony, I'm really pleased to be co-hosting with you today. For these Making an Impact specials, we always have a guest co-host, so maybe you could introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Anthony Mtitimila. I am the Senior Partnerships and Innovation Manager within the Research Partnerships and Innovation team. And I guess my role is, Andrew mentioned, so a lot of work that I do is around bridges between sort of the industry community as well as the academic community. So my work focuses around sort of establishing partnerships with our industry partners, essentially around the digital work, given the institutional theme that I support at the universities around digital research and innovation. So I tend to work with, both small, medium enterprises to large organizations where we're sort of supporting collaborative research funding opportunities. And also, I guess my work is around sort of developing this sort of digital research and innovation community across Liverpool. So I'm really keen to get to know academics working in this space, regardless which faculty they belong to. So pleased to be here today.
Brilliant, thank you. I was going to ask you that. So are you working with academics from all three faculties, or is it mainly science and engineering?
Yeah, so I work across the university, so it's an institutional role. So it's pretty much any department, any school, and all three faculties I work across. I mean, people say, sort of digital has no borders. Dani and Andrew, so the session you're involved in at Making Impact this year is around building the future-proof and resilient city. Can you both expand on what this would look like in reality? You know, what does a sort of a resilient city look like in practice?
Well, the first thing I would say is that if I knew everything, or we knew everything, we probably wouldn't be doing this session. And in part, some of the idea of bringing people together to discuss is because it's very much, as we say in academia, work in progress. I think it's fairly complicated, and there's a lot of things that come in together. And in some ways, that's part of my answer, is that it requires a lot of different views and different input from people from different corners. So to me, the interesting bit on the concept of resilience is this idea of being able to respond to things that you can't control in ways that make you stay afloat. And I think, to me, a lot of that has to do with building on the strengths that you have already, and trying to make sure that you don't put all your eggs in your basket, if you wish, just rather than focusing on the one thing that either is very good or you want to be very good. You try to diversify, and you try to create almost a portfolio of solutions, or a portfolio of strengths. And to do that, I think you have to bring together, well, it's a complicated endeavor, but you have to bring together people from industry. You have to ideally bring together people from places like universities, and of course the government and citizenship. And any successful endeavor, at least that I've seen in the past, that tries to bring all of that, needs to be very open and kind of not the type of thing that focuses on the very one thing, but tries to be more open and sort of inclusive and encompassing. So it's a very long-winded way of saying that we probably don't know yet, but I think the answer, in a way, is always constantly changing. And I think it has to come from deliberation from different parts. I think that would be my core message. Thanks
for that. So we'll come back on the point we just made about bringing people together. That's very interesting. How about yourself, Andrew?
Yeah, I think for me, kind of the smart cities bit and the digital transformation of urban areas plugs in a lot to kind of this concept of society 5.0, of saying, look, the kind of the first human society, we were out kind of hunting with sticks and stones, and then society 2 was agriculture, so we started farming, and then society 3 was kind of the Victorian industrial revolution, and we're now in society 4, which is that kind of post-industrial information society. But all those technologies now matured, and kind of we've got this sort of progressive approach to urbanization, where we can say we can now remake our cities into a really human-centric environment. We can make things smarter. We can be more sustainable, more efficient. We can have different kind of economic models of usage and utilization with the tech. And we're kind of almost there. We've done the smart cities thing, so we've added sensors to things. We've started opening up data sets, and we know the power of kind of the insights and the visibility of open data and using AI to help plan things. So the next challenge is with all this technology, what are we going to do to make our cities better for people? How are we going to improve health outcomes with data? How are we going to pool all of this information so that we can make sure that we address root causes of problems, whether that's health inequality, educational inequality, training, environmental sustainability. If we're making these smart places to live, if we can start with a blank slate, how do we want to remake our cities around the people and our current generation and children?
That's an interesting point you've raised there, Andrew. So, I mean, I'm wondering now. So there's the whole concept of resilient city and smart city. I mean, are they two different things, or?
I think that they're one in the same. So you've seen that with COVID is so your resilience in the healthcare system and your resilience in public health. As we get into kind of less certain times, and we start talking about energy security and kind of quality of air and the environment, how can you make it resilient with technology? Well, you understand what the demands are and the needs and requirements. You understand what the resource availability is, and then you look at the human nature bit to see how you can nudge behaviours to not overload the system, to not ask too much from the planet, from the city. And then you build in those resiliencies and redundancies. So in a former life, I was involved with a data center business, and we sold disaster recovery services. And the idea in data centers was first of all, you kind of back stuff up. So if you're thinking about it, a computer system, you back your information up. So that's the first thing. So if something fails, you've got a backup. But then you want to add in resilience, and you do that through either building sort of firm walls and defenses, but also adding in redundancies to the system. So how can we create redundancies in our cities so that we can take kind of additional sort of stress loads as they come along, whether that's from public health emergencies like the pandemic, whether it's from energy crises, or whether it's from kind of environmental challenges.
Thank you, Dani. Just if I may come back to you on one of the points you raised before, clearly it sounds like there's a complexity in terms of developing the structures to work across a city. If you're developing a smart city or a resilient city, I mean, clearly there are some challenges. I mean, how do you overcome some of those barriers in terms of, you have a local authority, you have industry, you have, I guess, the academic community. These are different disciplines, right? Different characters. How do you bring those sort of teams together to be able to develop a resilient city?
Yes, I think that's in many ways the $1 million question. How once you have all the pieces in place, how do you bring them together and make them fit so they actually become one rather than disparate ones running on their own direction? And I think it's a huge challenge, and it's one that you need to recognize very explicitly before you can do anything meaningful, because the thinking that if you have all the pieces, they'll just fall into place by themselves, I think is probably a bit of wishful thinking more than anything. So I think I don't have any silver bullet. My general approach is trying to bring everyone together, make communication and information as shared and as constant as possible, so everyone is on the same page, and also trying to recognize what everyone is in the room for. I think that's another aspect that sometimes gets missed, that everyone wants the rest of the world to sort of dance to their own tune and don't realize that everyone else has their very own tunes that they would like everyone else to dance to too as well. And I think a bit of understanding and a bit of putting yourself in the feet and in the boots of everyone else, trying to understand what is the real goal that local government is trying to achieve, to deliver. What are academics really excited about, and how can you make them work in ways that they are rewarded, but they're also contributing to the general message. And I think the same with industry, that they have, it's a sector that has very particular goals, and making everything explicit that everyone has their own goals, and that there's actually, because I truly believe there is value in bringing everyone together. I think you can make more than the sum of its parts, but it's not an automatic process. And I think until you recognize what everyone is in for and what everyone gets fired up about, it's tricky to do it in a sort of balanced way or non-forced sort of organic way, I think.
I thought it was really interesting, Andrew, what you were saying about that kind of human-centric nature to the work that you're doing. And in a previous role, I did some work around child-friendly cities, where we were really trying to understand the child's voice and parents' voice, practitioners' voices in the design of cities. So I just wondered, how important is it to include and involve all those voices, the multiple sectors, to make a city future-proof, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's really important to get everyone involved and to appreciate that, we've traditionally sort of zoned cities into residential areas and commercial areas and industrial areas. But cities are living organisms, and the economies are living organisms. So that's going to change, and areas and boundaries are going to move. You can't just put so a lot of the work we do is with manufacturing. So I'm one of the biggest advocates for UK manufacturing there is, because if we're going to do all the great innovation we do, our scientists and engineers in universities, we need to manufacture it somewhere, and the safest, cleanest, best place to manufacture it is going to be close to the universities and close to or within kind of our own economy is to really capture the value for that and make sure that the recognition is there of the intellectual effort. So manufacturing is traditionally kind of farmed out to be in the dirty activity that's out on the outskirts, but actually UK manufacturing is one of the cleanest in the world, and European and UK manufacturing is highly regulated. So you shouldn't sort of stop at thinking of the cities as being your street. It should be, where are you going to live, where are you going to work, where are you going to get your healthcare, how are you going to attract your inward investment, where are you going to spend your leisure time. And it's a family exercise. You appreciate there are different demographics, and people will have different requirements and different outlooks at different stages in their life as well. And the challenge is really to put together a flexible framework that allows you to adapt to the changing needs and requirements of the population and the changing challenges of the environment. That's not just sort of the weather environment, but financial hardships as we go through different economic cycles, as we have technological disruption. So in the grand scheme of things, the ultimate vision, I guess, is to try and create an open architecture for resilient smart cities, where we say we put all of these assets in place, these data collection assets, we put all this connectivity in place, but we don't necessarily know what the destination is going to look like or what the form of the city is going to be from year to year. But what we can do is try and make sure that we come up with something that's pliable and resilient and can change shape based on the requirements of the citizens.
Brilliant. And you've touched on it there, but how is university-led research involved in shaping that?
So from a VEC point of view, we work with colleagues across faculty, but we're principally our background has been in engineering. So we've run a number of regionally funded innovation initiatives in city region, and that means we have some funding where we can work with our academics and we can work with predominantly small businesses who are really exciting because they're the ones that you're going to get the growth from. Initiatives or companies like organizations like DriverNet, which started off a guy in St. Helens, ex-logistics manager, startup company originally aimed at the logistics sector for truck drivers to be able to book vehicles in and out to sites quickly, to stop idle time of trucks being parked up outside of sites. Diesel engines running, particulates going out the back of the truck, not good. He's been very successful, driving has been very successful in that field, but also he's now moved into community care, so scheduling and optimizing community ambulances, and working with local authorities to get more cars off the road, whilst at the same time getting more patients to visits and improving health outcomes. Within the manufacturing base, we've seen a big shift to clean energy in Liverpool City region. So we're working with Northern Automotive Alliance to look at vehicle electrification. So we work on a project called Cheshire and Warrington 4.0, and that's looking at how we can help level up manufacturing. But working with NAA, a big opportunity there is how we can take manufacturers and move them into electric vehicle revolution. The LCR programs also worked closely with combined authority and city region LEP to try and help inform what new technologies does city need. So for us, it's digital twins. So we've got this concept of a digital twin is creating a digital version of your city. So that's not just a kind of a VR model of walking around a city. That starts with kind of the visual, but then adds the layers of utility. So water utilities, electrical utilities, simulating traffic movements, simulating people movements, simulating energy waste within cities. How do you use that tool to inform decision making? So we're doing a lot of work on that front at the moment in city region. That's all powered by the capabilities of University of Liverpool's academics. All of this stuff has an academic underpinning, and it's the challenge is reconciling the academic community and the industrial community to help realize a value proposition. This is not about commercializing. Universities just talk about kind of commercializing and creating spin-outs. Commercial value is not just about raising seed funding and capital or making money. It's about generating value for somebody, and that could be a cost saving, that could be a non-financial value, and that's kind of the activity we're involved in.
And I think in many ways cities are a core resilience technology that humans have invented a long time ago and that is constantly evolving. And I think this idea that cities are going to change, I would just say, with a bit of a longer historic perspective, cities have always been evolving, and they've always been in a relationship with the technology and the cultural and social values that we have. That's why more modern cities look more like car-centric, while medieval ones are much more pedestrian-based. And I think the moment that we're in now is perhaps a very good opportunity. That's where I agree really with Andrew, that it's a really good opportunity for reshaping and rethinking the city that, you know, will inhabit in the next 50 or 100 years. And there's a lot in how we can do to shape it, to make it more about people rather than machines or industry. And a lot of that, I think that's where technology comes in, that is really sort of the platform that will allow us to be a bit more flexible and a bit more adapting the shape of cities. And then the other thing that I was probably going to say in terms of collaborations with research, I think there's a lot of value on working with local research, but there is also a lot of value, I think, in connecting with national institutes and international ones. So I guess I'm putting my Turing hat here. The concept of digital twins is one of the core sort of comparative advantages that the Alan Turing Institute has been working on for a while. And I think it's a great example also on how you really need the local and the more national or global, because there's a lot of elements in digital twin technology that I think is very, very shareable across places. But there is also a fantastic example of how there's not a one-size-fits-all off-the-shelf technology that you can just, you know, airlift from London and drop it in Liverpool and it'll work just as fine, because it won't. You really need to fine-tune and tweak it to the local conditions. And I think there's a lot of work that can be done with local partners in that respect.
It's interesting to hear the point you made earlier on, Andrew, around sort of adapting to changing needs of environments, and we've heard about technology adoption. So clearly there's some interesting challenges in the time that we're living now, around things to do with the environment. There's a massive challenges, I guess, affecting pretty much all places and cities. But I just wondered whether there are perhaps any lessons that we can learn from successes from around the world. Perhaps are there any countries that are doing this really well, bringing the digital twin concept and the academic community and the industry and local government together to achieve good successes for their cities?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that there's different cities across the world that have done it well, but the first thing I say is kind of looking abroad is inspiration, or looking to other people as inspiration, but you've got to contextualize that. So if you look at somewhere like China or the Middle East, it's a lot of new cities, and there's a lot of ability for a government to roll out a central plan. And then if you move to somewhere like Europe or the US, where we have established cities, it's a different set of challenges, because you're not starting with a blank piece of paper and kind of one unified authority. So places like Copenhagen, Amsterdam have done very well in Europe. Singapore's done a great job at being a smart city, and the focus for most of those has been around things like health outcomes and payment systems and energy usage, responsible energy usage. So definitely there's kind of a world tour that's needed to go out and see what other people have done, but very much understand how they've achieved what they've achieved in the context of their culture and of their economy. If it's a central kind of government plan into a new city, you've got different opportunities to being able to, or different opportunities to retrofitting it to a medieval European city. So yeah, Copenhagen on sustainability front, and Singapore, I think on kind of things like mobility and transport and energy saving.
Dan, is there anything you'd like to add to that? I'll come back to you on the digital twin and retrofit, because I guess there's something there about Liverpool. Perhaps let's speak quite local here. Liverpool region. It's not a new city. What are the key points that perhaps we can learn from other parts of the world and retrofit those into Liverpool region using the digital twin concept?
Yeah, I probably don't have much new to add to what Andrew said. I think I very much subscribe his views. The idea that, to me, one of the valuable ideas of looking at cities from a policy perspective is that you can think of them as living laboratories that are kind of running different experiments all at the same time. And of course, they all have different controlled environments that are not directly comparable. But if you know how to look, I think you can learn a lot. And there's a lot of opportunity because there's a lot of experimentation. So I think the challenge is, how do you get the more transferable elements without missing the point that the context, as Andrew was saying, are probably different. And you're going to have to do some exercise, and so you're going to have to put some effort into tweaking or contextualizing in the local context. In terms of digital twins, I think there's, again, I'm probably going to be repeating this a little bit. It's another work in progress. I think the concept in itself, the idea that you have two entities, the physical reality and then the digital one, and the two are hybridized or they're connected in both directions through data, is really powerful. In many ways, I will also say, with my academic hat, I think in many aspects it's still a science fiction more than science construct. But it's a good one to have, I think, as an end goal, because even just the steps that you take towards then, even if you never really achieve sort of the science fiction version, it's very useful because it helps you think how you can hybridize real, physical, not real. I think the digital is probably just as real, if not more, than the physical. But it helps you think how to hybridize physical with digital representations of the world, and it helps you imagine what kinds of technologies would make the physical world a better one that you want to live in through technology.
Brilliant, thanks. So, Dani, if technology helps to drive these smart city projects, what can be done to ensure the future-proof cities are not only technology savvy but adaptive to their residents' needs?
Yeah, again, another question I wish I had the full answer for. I think I'm a big technology fan in all realms of life, not only on cities. And to me, the technologies that really stick to, if I look at, I try a lot of new technologies for almost everything that I go about in my life. And most of them I discard after a couple of weeks or a couple of months. And if you really look at the ones that I don't discard, they are the ones that I think is Steve Jobs or one of these gurus once said that they just do their job and get out of the way. You don't realize they exist. So I think in some ways, sometimes with Smart Cities project, there's a bit of fetishism of technology for the sake of technology. And I think that misses the point of what the role of technology really should be, which is not being in the middle, not just helping facilitate people get together, connect better, and make better decisions, do their jobs better, and have better lives, but in a way that it's almost, it's ambient. You don't realize is there. It's just doing its thing, so you can do what you want to do better. And I think that applies both to the individual context and to full cities. So in terms of what recommendations, I think it's, well, as I said, I don't have a full answer. I have some thoughts. One is you have to experiment a lot because you don't know what's going to work. I mean, things are very obvious in hindsight, but they're also very useless in hindsight. And you need to make decisions now for the future. So when you don't know, when there's a lot of uncertainty, I think there's a lot of good to be said for experimentation, for trying things, seeing what works, iterating. And in some ways, one of the better metaphors that I think should apply to the smart cities umbrella from the world of technology and software is this idea of bootstrapping something, seeing if it works, testing, and then iterating. And if it doesn't work, you can discard it. And for that, you need to be in a position where you're not making a huge investment first to see if it works, and then we will see later. So I think the baking in experimentation into the policies that you do is really important.
I mean, I guess, go in sort of in reflection, the whole sort of smart cities approach, requires the interaction between the citizens as well as the, industry and technology providers. But how can we make sure that all communities and cultures are considered in this journey?
I think the first thing to say is probably to look at the idea of digital as a means to break down barriers and walls and reduce friction. So you'd move in more to kind of a sort of a utopian ideal of real citizen democracy. So the barriers to accessing or barriers to having a voice in decision making that have traditionally been there, they should come down by being able to do more stuff, on a smartphone, or for different communities. If you can access, local government documents in different languages. If you have disabilities, so visual impairment or hearing impairment, the digital tools can help you engage in democratic process and decision-making process more freely. The technology should also be there as a way to collect data and to use data in a completely unbiased way. And we know a lot of our kind of institutional decision making, it does have legacy biases in it. So how can you use that data to really level the playing field, so you get a true picture of today and of what's going on and where you need to deploy your resources to get the outcomes and the objectives that you want. That would be kind of my answer, is viewing the digital piece as a tool to engage better sort of across the board with everybody.
What do you think the communities understand how they can influence that agenda? There's data is quite sensitive, and people probably say, what are you using my data for? What's in it for me, type thing. Do you think they understand the value?
I don't know, and that's a kind of a challenge we have with some of the projects that we're looking at VEC, and it's a personal hang up for me over privacy. It's an education piece as to why you're collecting data and what data you're collecting, and also having that transparency and of how you're anonymizing it. So I would probably be much more comfortable personally with an open data repository with a written publicized protocol having access to my data than a private company that's out there to make money. Once you're in the kind of the collective and you're one data point in a pool, you can add to the value of the whole without having individual privacy sort of invaded. So I think you're spot on. There's a science communication and there's a public policy communication bit to bring people on board with why we're doing what we're doing and how it's been done. I'd probably kind of build on that point and go back to your earlier point of how we gonna achieve the smart cities bit. We don't know what innovation looks like, and that's part of the thing I think science struggles with. It is when you do science, you're looking for controls in an experiment. You're looking for variables that you can quantify, and you're looking for an outcome that you can repeat and replicate. With innovation, we don't know what innovation is going to look like. We didn't know that Tim Berners-Lee's approach and World Wide Web would lead to Web 1 2.0. We didn't know what the kind of the Web 2 bit on social media, or Web 2 would lead to social media. And it's the same with the data we've got from cities. Data is not a finite resource. People compare it to oil, but oil is a finite resource. Once you've sucked it out, once you've burnt it, it's gone. Data is there, can be reused many times. So using it doesn't consume it. So first point is data's not finite, and two, the innovations that are going to come off that data, we don't need to know what they are. We just need to create a fertile environment so that bright people can try ideas out, fail, try businesses out, fail, succeed, get investments and move on. And that probably plugs into the point of how we bring as many people along with this as we can. Not all ideas are going to work. But we need lots of ideas, we need lots of voices, we need lots of people trying stuff, and the stuff that doesn't work we'll park, and the stuff that does work we'll hopefully see value from.
I might actually disagree a little bit on this one in terms of the role of technology in ensuring that all communities are heard and included. I think, to me, technology is at best a lubricant that makes the machine work better. But if the machine is not the one you want, it's not going to make the machine better. And what I mean with that is that I think a lot of these decisions are much less about technology and much more about the democratic process of how do we incorporate people's voices and how to incorporate people's perspectives. And technology, it can change that, but historically it's almost never done that by itself. So I think we need to be very proactive in making sure that the technologies that we design, but also the processes in which we embed technology, are inclusive by themselves and by design. We don't leave this up to the algorithm, because if history is anything, it's not necessarily going to work super well. And I think the exciting part is that a lot of this is still to be done, so that there's a lot of opportunity to influence these processes. And it is now that we have to be very clear that we need to make sure these processes involve everyone, both when we design technologies so they are truly sort of global, but also when we decide how these technologies are part of society, how these technologies are part of the policies that we design, etc. So I think we need to be a bit more proactive in taking responsibility on how technology gets embedded in the social fabric and in the policy discussion.
Do you think a living lab is the answer to that? With a few caveats?
I think it's part. Yeah, I think absolutely. I think it's part of the idea. Andrew's point about trying a lot of ideas and see what works and what doesn't. I think it's at the core of both the scientific process, but also I think of how a progressive society evolves and gets better. And I think cities are fantastic incubators for ideas, both in industry and elsewhere. And if you think of pretty much any big idea that humanity has had since we have cities, they all come really from urban environments. So fostering that sort of multiplicity of approaches and perspectives that comes from having a lot of people participating is very important.
Well, thank you both, Andrew and Dani. That's been a really interesting conversation. This podcast is called the Developing Practice Podcast. And so we like to finish each podcast with a couple of take-home tips for our listeners to reflect on in terms of their own personal practice. So if you could both give us a tip in terms of thinking about our practice, what would it be?
I think for me, the one kind of standing sermon I give all particularly academic colleagues is our research is really important, and academics think of themselves as academics, and sometimes that makes you quite insular. The world's got some massive challenges now and in the near future, and if we're going to address those challenges, we need new ideas, but we also need academics to see those ideas through. It's not enough to just have a good piece of research or a good innovation. You need to reduce it to practice. So please, have the ambition and don't feel sort of pigeonholed into being in a university life. Academics are entrepreneurs. You guys have to fight for your own research incomes and your own grants. That's an entrepreneurial skill set. And generally, when I kind of put academics in rooms with industry, when it comes to that subject matter, you're the smartest person in the room. The industry dimension bit is quite often sort of intimidating, but there is so much potential within our research base. There's so much passion there. There's so much authenticity. Come to talk to us at Beck. Come to talk to Anthony. How you engage the industry, how you want to make change happen. Because having the idea is just having the idea. You need to follow through and find partners to make it happen. And that would be my kind of call to action for anyone listening.
I think I might pick up on Anthony's last point about living labs, or looking at cities as living labs and environments where everyone is part of. I think one of the most rewarding things to me of studying cities is that, unlike people who study very abstract things that they're only their object of study, cities are things that, to me, they're my job, but they're also what I do after work. And I think that's the case for many people, and both academics and not. I think my point would be, think of how you fit into this living lab, how you are part of this evolving organism, if you wish. And from a research point of view, or from a citizen/activism point of view, think of how you fit and what are the parts that you would like to change, or you can change, that you think you're well fitted. Because, as I said, unlike other parts of science where not everyone necessarily gets involved every day, with cities everyone does, and we all have some form of relationship, so we can always contribute to make them better, or at least make them different in the future.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. Really interesting conversation. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you very much.